Guys can see we've got Sally with us from Focus Title. Our goal, I really just wanted Sally to go over a closing statement and just kind of go over the things that we as agents should be looking for. Um, the more eyes on a closing statement, the better, because there's a lot of room for error in terms of things that are missed, figures that are wrong, name incorrect, etc. So just, as an agent, what should we be looking for on the closing statement? Um, and then a title commitment as well. We're not, you know, our job as agents, we're not supposed to be experts on title, of course. But there are some things that we can look for on a title commitment in terms of just kind of extra judgments that might pop up that we can kind of be another eye on it. But I always tell agents when we're teaching about title, you've got the experts. If there are defects on a title that say Focus needs to work through something with a seller, they'll be able to identify those obviously right away. But I do think it's helpful to have an understanding of what um, the commitment is for, obviously, and what you can look for as well. So I think we should do the title commitment first, Sally. What do you think?
Yep, I think that's a good idea.
Okay. So let me pull it up. Oh, I didn't want to do that. What I wanted to do. Here we go. Okay, so let me get this bigger. All right, Sally, I'll let you take it away.
Great, thanks. So the title commitment is sent to all the parties, which means you as agents are able to view it prior to having it sent to either a seller or a buyer. So some of the most important things that you want to look for on Schedule A is the purchase price. Make sure that is what it is supposed to be at. The buyer, make sure the name is spelled correctly. This title commitment is both sides, so it does list the lender that's involved. The loan policy, I'm not sure if you would know the amount. If you do, great, double check that. But I would like you to check to make sure that the lender that's listed on this title commitment is the lender that's involved in this deal. You also want to make sure that the owner, John Smith, is the seller. Make sure that is spelled correctly. That is about everything on Schedule A that you need to check over. Spelling and amount of purchase price. Schedule B is the section for requirements. This is what tells us in the transaction what needs to be cleared. So as you can see on this title, for instance, number 4A, there is a divorce, and we do need to review the marital settlement agreement. If the divorce is final and has been finalized for a while, we need to see the certified copy that has been filed. Our title examiners want to review the final filed document, not one that they don't have a stamp on, because then it's not final. In this section also, you could, the requirement could be that we need to draft an HT 110 to remove somebody from the tax roll. That would let us know this here also. So if you just get familiar with reviewing this to see if there's anything out of the ordinary that maybe you didn't know, it helps us. If not, title will reach out for the documents that are requested. The next section is Section B. This is a pretty standard Schedule B, Section 2. I think if you go down to the next page, Steph, these are all basically on the same title. This section here, Schedule B Part 2, is going to let us know if there are any judgments, tax liens, any liens against the property that we need to clear. This section also might let us know if there is a prior owner mortgage. Sometimes when the property is sold the prior time, it's not cleared up. So if you see something in this section where it is not your seller, don't worry, we'll figure it out. We can clear that. This section also tells us, 400 to 499 tells us if there are any mortgages, second mortgage, home equity line of credits on the property, any HUD mortgages that were assistance, anything like that is on here also. Those are just a few things section or Schedule B Part 2 goes through. The other thing is there is on the footnote section in A, it will let us know if the taxes are up to date or if they are delinquent or if they're on a payment plan, if they need to be paid at the time of closing. I think that is really all that I would like for agents to look through. There's just a few things, like I said, make sure the spelling is correct for your seller or buyer. If there is a divorce maybe that you didn't know about, you would be able to see that right away. If there was a death that maybe you didn't know title was vested in that name, it's going to tell you with the HT 110. And then here, of course, it's going to tell you if there are any judgments or if there are any mortgages that we have to pay off.
I feel like one common question that we get a lot from clients, and this happens a lot, is judgments against other people with common names. You want to speak to that real quick?
That's a great question. So our title examiners do put on same or similar names often just to make sure that it is not the seller or even the buyer. If it is not the exact name, we have them fill out and execute an affidavit at the closing, just stating that it wasn't them. A lot of times it's a John Smith for instance. You know, right here, John or Jane Smith. They're very common names.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. And then I sort of feel like we might need to backtrack a little bit and just even kind of over explain like what the title is for to begin with. Just, in our offers to purchases, it's clear, these spelled out that sellers are providing free and clear closing or free and clear title at closing. So yeah, do you just want to explain what the job of the title search is for to begin with?
The title search is definitely to see if there were any judgments, liens, anything that we would have to clear up prior to closing. The seller pays for that insurance policy and then it is mailed to the buyer. Is that
Yes, no, that's great.
great?
No, it's just, for new agents, it's like we have to like take this
Understood.
in chunks, in terms of like all of the things that are thrown at us. Um, and, for example, I know that I wasn't paying attention to title processes when I first started. Like that was just like, oh, I'll wait till kind of, there's so much coming at me. I got to learn other stuff first, I had to prioritize, right?
Well,
Um,
my husband's name is Richard Reed, and the spelling isn't common, but the name was. So every time we moved, his name would come up on title as someone who stole a motorcycle.
oh my God.
We had to clear him every time.
Sign an affidavit every time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, let's go to the closing statement. Are there any questions so far from anybody? Okay. I think I just want to like reiterate, if there's anything that's glaring on that comes up on a title commitment, as agents, you've got the experts here, like Sally and her team identifies those things. And if there's something that needs to be cleared up or worked out with a seller, that seller's title company is taking the reins on making sure that it's clear. So just kind of give you peace of mind that.
And we just like you to review it because sometimes you see it before we open it. And if you're like, oh, there's all these judgments or tax liens and they're not your seller, we don't want to send it to the seller without confirming. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, we don't want to freak
Scare
anyone out.
Okay. All right, so the closing statement. So first, what's the function of the closing statement?
This definitely tells the sellers how much their proceed amount will be. If, not if, the amount of, it's to pay the bills, basically. You're selling a property, and we need to make sure that all the appropriate parties are paid. If it was a cash deal, we would definitely make sure that the borrower side was up to date with the correct credit amount, and their final amount would be sent in for the closing then. So again, we just want to make sure that when a closing statement is sent out, excuse me, the property address is the address that, that is your file, and that the settlement date is the correct closing date. Okay? So the closing statement really reflects the seller side of the transaction, as I stated. Make sure that first number in the credit column is the final sale price of the property, that we didn't miss an amendment or something didn't change there. This particular file has rent, so we want to make sure that the prorated amount for the credit back to the seller is correct. And then the city town taxes and the water sewer proration are on there, and that is also a debit from the seller and a credit to the buyer for their portion of the full bills they will pay. The next section is going to be your title and closing fees. The biggest fee in that section, as you can see, is your owner's title policy, which is, right there. And then this is where we can note if a prior title was given. That way you can see the reflected 15% off in that section. So just make sure to check that because we can always update that. All right.
One thing, I think the deposit.
Oh, the earnest money. You're right. Make sure the earnest money is on there.
So it's labeled as deposit here, everybody, but this is the earnest money amount. So this is definitely something that you can check for as well.
Thanks, Steph. So that wire proceeds amount is still the title and closing fee section. The next section is the agreed upon commission for each brokerage. We try to break it down into the percentages, so make sure that that adds up to what your listing contract states. This is a great section if you have a buyer agency agreement to make sure that would be on the buyer side. If you have additional commissions for a listing agent, that would be on the seller side. Make sure those are all listed. The next section is the state transfer charge. This is what Wisconsin charges the seller to transfer the title into the buyer's names. The next section is the payoff, and this can be as many as needed. This particular file only has one. We order the payoff on there. Sometimes you get questioned as to why it is more than what the seller might have in front of them. That is because we have to order an actual payoff, not the principal amount. It does change because a lender will get their remaining interest for the month or the next month. It just depends on when we close. And then under the miscellaneous section, it just depends on the offer. If there's anything in there stating, like this one has a special assessment to the city of West Dallas, so that is gonna go there. They also have a water bill that's due. Also, just for reference, this was a rental property, and that rent deposit for security is the very last item. Just to make sure you're aware where that would be on the closing statement, just to double check those things. If there are any invoices that need to be paid from the closing statement, that miscellaneous section is where those would be listed also. Basically, anything that is out of the ordinary, we would put in that miscellaneous section. And then, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna comment, just so you guys have an understanding. So where Sally is getting these figures from, the special assessments to the city and the water bill, part of their process is doing a check-in with the city to see what these figures are, and if, you know, if there are special assessments, levied. So just so you guys have an understanding again of where they're getting these figures from.
If you go up to the section for the title and closing fees stuff, there's actually, oh, it goes, special assessment municipal lien search. That's where we find those special assessments and water bill, and the tax numbers come from those documents. That's why there is a charge to order them.
Okay.
So then the final section under the seller section, that first box, so to speak, the 167, that is the amount of debits, which means that is what it basically costs them to sell their property, including their payoff of their mortgage. And the next box down would be their final proceed amount. That is what they would take home if they were closing right now and I'm cutting them a check. So,
Yeah, purchase price minus charges equals this.
correct.
And then the last section signs
Just
off.
signature page. Yep.
Okay. And then typically, you can expect, so the title commitment, I don't know, you would say maybe 2 weeks after an accepted offer roughly is when.
We try to say anywhere from 5 to 7 days. Now that the spring market is here, it's closer to maybe 10 to 12 days.
Okay. And I think in the offer, a deadline is given, I think it's 5 business days before closing, but title companies usually get these title commitments out much faster than that.
Yeah.
But then the closing statement, you could expect to see that probably 5 days before. I don't know, that's probably 3 to 5 days before closing.
Yes, it's a good estimate because we do normally have to order payoffs and sometimes that takes some time to get.
And then from a seller perspective, from a listing agent perspective, you know, the process of ordering title, once you have an accepted offer, that needs to be done, you know, within, I make it a part of my process to do it within 48 hours of accepted offer. So the sooner that you guys get, Sally and Focus their information, I didn't include this in part of the presentation, but, you know, there's a checklist of things that the title company needs, including the offer to purchase, the, listing agreement, and then that authorization form that, Focus Title has, which allows them to do their job, you know, once the seller has signed off on that authorization form. But I guess what I want you to hear is, as a listing agent, you know, you're gonna wanna make sure that the title company is aware, of this accepted offer within the first 48 hours of an accepted offer. Excuse me. And then from the buyer's perspective, the lender is the one who's ordering the lender side. Now I'm just thinking of things. I also want to clarify too, and this is something that always tripped me up in the beginning was sometimes there could be two title companies involved, and sometimes the same title company is going to work on both sides. And that's all just kind of preference, you know. The lender might see it as beneficial to just use the same title company that the seller has already hired. Other lenders have their own preferred title companies and they'll hire their own title company to do their part in it. And then the two title companies will connect with each other before closing to make sure that everything is correct and that they're all on the same page in terms of numbers. So anything else that you think we could address?
Is there a checklist on what title, you're the listing agent, what you should send to title?
I do have one that I can send if it's requested, or I can send it to somewhere so it can be put somewhere wherever they can go and see what is needed, because it's pretty much every title company needs the same things to get an order started. So
That might be something I will double check to make sure that that's on our resources page, on our Keller Williams resources page.
it might need to be updated. I'm not sure when that would have been put on there, but
Okay, we'll double check that. And also, well, actually, I'm going to share my screen again. Show you guys where you can find documents and fit forms. Here's a file that Sally and their team are working on right now. It was a listing. You go under, oh yeah, here we go. So when you apply a template in zip forms, we've got a focus title folder. You open that up. Yep, here we go. Broker's closing checklist. We've got a listing questionnaire. Focus title buyer seller info sheet. So when you order title, you would want to get this filled out for Sally and Focus. More importantly, I would say, is this form here, the authorization to release information. So this needs to be signed, and I make it a part of my process to get this signed at the time of getting the listing paperwork signed. So here, this is just information that Focus uses. So is this property your primary residence? Any construction work done? Is this informs that they need to collect additional paperwork if the seller plans to pre-sign? And then the signature allows them to order the mortgage payoff that you put down here, the mortgage information. So this is a document that they need right away as well.
And that should be, for any place that that the seller owes money. So
Oh yeah,
the home equity loan also needs that release.
some condo and homeowners associations require it also to release their resale demand documents too, so.
yep. So we have to make sure that this is complete so that everyone can do their job efficiently. And then here is that checklist. at the listing appointment, you can ask for the prior title policy that gets gets your seller client a discount. Provide the seller with the seller certification of non-foreign status. So yeah, I think this would be something that would be updated.
Yep, because we can get that at the closing.
Yep. And then, but the seller authorization is what I just went through. Title fees for sellers, so you can use the Focus Title app for that. And then again, this is more just being able to explain the title process to your seller client at the time of listing. Then once there's an accepted offer, then here's your checklist of everything that you're gonna get over to Focus initially, and then along the way. Yeah, any amendments, for example, Sally brought that up earlier. So let's say your purchase price changes after you are after inspection negotiations. Maybe it came down in price because the seller is going to give the buyer some concessions. We need to make sure that Focus is informed of that. So you would be getting them that information along the way. Along with anything else that might be pertinent to the sale. Some of this might be applicable and some might not be. So
You do accept copies of lien waivers. Need the original, correct?
Was the question, do we accept the copies?
Yes.
Yes, yes, it does not have to be original. And really, anything that you think is pertinent to us, send it over. We'd rather have too much because we scan it all to the file electronically. So just send it over to us, we'll scan it to the file, no problem.
awesome. Okay, are there any other questions? Give you guys the gift of time.
This was very helpful, Sally.
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you,
anytime.
Sally. Next week is the 15th. Miss Joan, it will be going over some fair housing. Yeah, going over fair housing. It's Fair Housing Month.
Mhm. Always an important reminder every year.
Totally. All right, thank you, everybody. We'll
Thanks.
let
Thank
you go.
you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.